The Odyssey, a long-haul freighter that had seen better centuries, grown like an old man settling into a worn armchair. Elias Vance, his face a roadmap of worry lines etched by too many light years and too little sleep, stared at the flickering comm panel. Static, just the endless, teeth-gritting hiss of nothingness. "Anything, Jax?" he asked, his voice raspy. Jax, a hulking Zidonian with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed with an internal amber light, shook his massive head. "Still nada, Captain. Not a blip. Not even the usual cosmic background noise fields, right?" Elias rubbed the back of his neck. The synthetic hairs are prickling with unease. They'd been out in the Perseus Arm for 6 standard months, hauling a shipment of cryopreserved synth cattle to the Kepler 186F colony. A milk run, they called it. Easy credits. Now it felt like they'd sailed off the edge of the damn map. The comms had died 3 days ago, sputtering out mid-transmission with a sound like a dying animal. Since then, silence. A thick, suffocating silence that pressing on them, amplifying the creaks of the aging ship and the frantic thump-thump-thump of Elias's own heart. "Try the long-range array again," Elias ordered, though hope felt like a dwindling ember, pointed towards, well, anywhere that isn't this godforsaken void. Jax grunted, his large fingers dancing across the controls. The hum of the array powering up was usually a comforting sound, a lifeline to the rest of humanity. Now, it felt like a desperate shout into a hurricane. While Jax tinkered with the comms, Elias drifted over to the observation window. Outside, the usual tapestry of distant stars was wrong. It wasn't that stars were missing, but they seemed muted, their light somehow less vibrant. And there were patches of absolute black, not the velvety black of empty space, but a deeper, hungrier black that seemed to swallow the light around it. It made his stomach churn. "Captain," a voice called out, making Elias jump. It was Lena, their xenobiologist, her usually bright eyes wide with a mixture of fear and morbid fascination. She was pointing at one of the monitor screens displaying sensor readings. "Look at this." Elias floated over. The screen showed a series of fluctuating energy readings, erratic spikes that made no sense. "What is it?" "Solar flares." Lena shook her head. "No. The patterns, they're almost organic, like a heartbeat, but all wrong. Unstable." "Organic energy?" Jax rumbled, his attention momentarily diverted from the silent comms. "That's not natural out here." "Natural hasn't been in the vocabulary for the last 72 hours, Elias muttered. A low thrumming started to vibrate through the ship, a subtle tremor that tickled at their teeth and resonated in their bones. It grew steadily louder, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of space around them. "What in the blazes is that?" Elias demanded, his hand instinctively reaching for the emergency beacon override, though he knew it was useless without comms. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging the bridge into momentary darkness before sputtering back to life, casting long, distorted shadows. On the main view screen, one of the patches of deeper black seemed to writhe. It wasn't moving like gas or dust. It was contracting and expanding with a slow, deliberate pulse. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Elias's professional detachment. This wasn't a malfunction. This wasn't a cosmic anomaly he'd read about in some dusty database. This felt alive. Then came the whispers. At first, Elias thought it was the ship's ancient ventilation system acting up. A low, sibilant murmur, just at the edge of hearing. But it wasn't the wind. It wasn't the hum of machinery. It was voices. Faint, distorted, like a chorus speaking in a language he didn't recognize, yet somehow felt deep in his bones. Lena clutched her head, her face paling. "Do you hear that? What is that sound?" Jax's amber eyes darted around the bridge, his massive frame tense. "Hear what? I don't hear anything." Elias frowned. Jax's auditory sensors were far more acute than humans. If he couldn't hear it, the whispers grew louder, coalescing into something almost intelligible. He could almost make out words, syllables that slithered into his mind, carrying a weight of ancient dread and something else, a terrible, gnawing hunger. He felt a cold dread seep into his soul, a primal fear he hadn't experienced since he was a child, lost in the labyrinthine underbelly of a space station. But this was worse. This felt cosmic, ancient, a terror that predated humanity itself. The writhing patch of black on the view screen continued its slow, sickening pulse, and then it began to extend tendrils, thin, inky black filaments that snaked out into the starfield, reaching toward the Odyssey. "We need to get out of here," Elias choked out, his voice trembling. "Jax, get us moving. Full burn. Any direction." Jax finally seemed to hear something. His brow furrowed, and he tilted his head, listening intently. I think I do hear something now. Faint, like insects crawling under my skin. The tendrils on the screen were getting closer, their movement accelerating. They seemed to arrive with an unnatural intelligence, seeking, probing. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the bridge. One of the sensor arrays on the exterior of the ship sparked and went dark. "They're touching us," Lena whispered, her eyes wide with horror. "Something out there. It's touching the ship." The thrumming intensified, vibrating through the deck plates. Up their legs. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of alien voices that seemed to burrow directly into Elias's mind, filling it with images of impossible geometries and unimaginable horrors. He saw fleeting glimpses of colossal, lightless shapes moving in the void, of gaping maws filled with rows upon rows of needle-sharp teeth, of eyes that burned with cold, alien intelligence. "Jax, now!" Elias screamed, his control finally snapping. With a roar, Jax slammed his fist onto the engine controls. The Odyssey shuddered violently as the engine strained to life, the artificial gravity momentarily lurching. But it was too late. One of the black tendrils, thicker now, like a living cable, slammed against the observation window. The reinforced plasteel groaned under the impact, a spiderweb of cracks spreading across its surface. Elias stumbled back, his breath catching in his throat. The whispers intensified, becoming a deafening roar in his mind. He could almost understand the words now, twisted and alien, yet carrying a horrifyingly clear message. "We are here. You are ours." Another tendril slammed against the hull, and a section of the ceiling paneling buckled inwards. Sparks rained down, and the smell of ozone filled the air. Lena screamed. Jax roared in defiance, his amber eyes blazing. Elias could only stare, paralyzed by a terror so profound it threatened to shatter his sanity, as the void outside pressed in, and the whispers promised a fate far worse than death. The blackness was no longer outside. It was seeping in,